And welcome back to some sort of the Cooler Jets podcast, where your host Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, it has been a while. The Jets just wrapped up their green and white scrimmage and their second week of training camp. It's been a few months, 2 months, I think, since our last episode. So we have a lot to get to today, including some stuff about the podcast, which I'll get to in a second. But first, Michael, because if I don't do it now, it probably won't be for another 5 minutes. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back, and I'm looking forward to a new era for both this team and this podcast. A little rusty right now since it's been a minute, but actually this is our first take. Hopefully this doesn't get deleted and we keep going here, but that's unusual. It usually takes us about, like you said, probably 17 on average, 17, 18, but this is number one right now, and we're rolling with it.
Shots. So, all right.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
I will say you seem, just based off your Twitter and my interactions with you, you do seem a little more re-energized based off of like the cynicism of last year. Like when we were doing these podcasts in December and January, they seem to have fully faded. We seem all in on the season and very excited. And I see a lot of positive, optimistic tweets. Is that a fair characterization of your mood heading into the first preseason game?
I would say so. Yeah, there's been some rejuvenation. It was rough last year, and I was, coming out of that, just like, I still got into it with free agency and the draft and everything, but it was, it made you question your fandom and the philosophical background of that. Like, what does it mean to be a fan after all this? But I'm back, and I'm ready to go through that cycle again after the inevitable happens. No, we're not even talking about that. It's going to be great. We're going to be here into February. We're going to be in for a great season, I think. So, yeah, I'm rejuvenated.
And that also brings us to PJ Clark. PJ, welcome to the show. The OG CYJ fans might remember that you were on this podcast in 2020 for a couple episodes, I think, during the Tank for Trevor season. You had your podcast Boomer Bust, where you went over like college football prospects. And actually, I think you were the first person to mention Zach Wilson's name on this podcast. It was still like October or something.
Yeah,
like,
I wish I didn't do that, but I did. It was
the butterfly effect of you saying it on CYJ. Yeah. Joe Douglas heard it, and then he was like, let me check out this kid from BYU.
Unfortunate.
The other thing.
That was me.
So PJ and I, we met at Syracuse. We watched 3 of the worst Jets games I've ever seen in my life together. We watched week 1, 2019, where they blew the lead. Week 2, post-Darnold mono with Trevor Siemian leg break. And then week 3, first game with a Luke Falk experience. And then we're like, you know what? We're done watching these games in person together. You also you went on to go work for the Lions for 3 years, worked in their social media department, but now you are able to do podcasts again. And so PJ is going to be joining us today and going forward. He's actually going to be taking over for me. I got a job with an NFL team, the LA Chargers, to work in their video production team. And it's been like a dream of mine really since high school. If you would have asked me what I wanted to do, I would have said work in the media department for an NFL team. So once I got this opportunity, like I knew I had to do it. It's a little bittersweet because this podcast has been, one of the number one thing I look forward to every week. And it's been a huge part in my career, and I really enjoy it. And every time we get any positive feedback and the negative stuff, I guess too, it's like the coolest thing I could imagine. So we can reminisce, Michael, towards the end of the podcast. I just wanted to get that out of the way. We had the thought of like once I got this, and this is why we haven't had a podcast in a while, it was like, well, are we going to keep doing this? And I was like, you know what? I do know somebody who I know can do a good job, who I know is smart, funny, energetic, a huge Jets fan, lives on Long Island, and has all the podcast experience in the world needed. And I was like, let's see if PJ Clark could be interested. And PJ, fortunately, the stars have aligned, and I can pass the baton to you. I'll still be lurking in the shadows. Hey, I still have access to the Twitter. I might hop on a pod sometime during the season if timing allows for it, but going forward, I have to put my full energy into this job. So, and this podcast and these listeners, they deserve somebody who can give it 100%. So PJ, we're very glad to have you, and we have one last pod, Michael, for now at least, to talk training camp. So I'm very excited. PJ, I'll go to you first. 2 weeks of training camp. I would say the biggest storylines, and I don't know where you want to start here, is probably the Reddick holdout. And maybe let's start here because the green and white scrimmage just wrapped up. The Joe Tippmann snapping issue seems to be the number one issue for this team right now. And as Michael pointed out in a tweet, it's like, well, compared to the last few training camps, really of my entire life, the center snapping, pretty good place to be as far as the number one issue. We've watched a lot of bad quarterback competition. So PJ, I guess scale 1 to 10, how concerned are you about Joe Tippmann snapping?
1 to 10, I'd be at like a 6. I'm not all the way there yet. I think I'm moderately concerned because this was an ongoing issue last year. Maybe not to this extent, or maybe not with the magnifying glass on it, because there were so many other issues last year to have a magnifying glass on. But listen, I thought Tippmann played pretty well last year. I was really impressed with what he brought to the table, and I am very, very excited for what this offensive line is potentially capable of this year if you're operating at full strength. And hopefully Elijah Vera Tucker, gets I won't even say, 17 games. I'll go, can we get him to like
more than half, maybe
12? Yeah, can we get him to 12? Like, that'd be sick. So Tippmann's going to be the anchor point, though, and you got to be able to get the ball and to hopefully Aaron Rodgers for the entire season, and that's just snapping the ball as a team that had a center, Spencer Long, that did end up having like legitimately the yips. Snapping the ball is pretty important, and I would like to see him get this down before we start playing real games here.
Michael, are you concerned? I saw you were tweeting out videos of a high school coach breaking down.
That was a great pull. That was a great pull.
I mean, clearly none of us have ever played center, so I don't know if we're qualified to speak on the technique aspect, but that video did seem kind of it convinced me at least. Are you concerned about this?
I would agree. I'm probably a little lower than PJ. I'd say 4 or 5, just because well, first of all, there's not really much else you can go to. It's not like the Jets have another option at center, so you kind of do have to see it through. And I'm confident he's going to get it figured out, just because overall, as a player, it seems like he's the type of guy who's going to put the work in and make the development, because, he got into the starting lineup at guard last year, switched to center, then held it down and had a really strong season. He was the first center drafted last year. I'm very optimistic about what he's going to be as a player. And in regards to snapping, he did struggle with it last year, which apparently flew over Nathaniel Hackett's head, unless he's just, he doesn't think we can watch the games. But regardless of that, I'm confident he's going to get it figured out. But yeah, like, I did go into the trenches this morning because I saw some clips floating around. There's a lot of fans there today because it's a scrimmage, but there was a really bad one where they were in the red zone, and I think it was like a 2nd and 8, and he just flew it like literally 2 feet over Rodgers' head for like a 20-yard loss. So I saw that and I was like, let me dig into this, because what is interesting to me is that it's not like he's all over the place, rolling snaps to the left, to the right. It's pretty much always high. So I was wondering, can't there just be a simple tweak to his technique? Like, hey, you're continuously doing this. Just work on ironing that out, and you can be more consistent. So I looked up some videos. I was looking at how to fix high shotgun snaps, and yeah, there's this one video from a high school coach that was
how many views did that have?
About it actually had 16,000. It had 16,000. So
our podcast,
he only had 160 subscribers though, so we got him beat.
Right.
But yeah, like, what he was showing was that it's often because the center is raising his butt right before he snaps the ball, and that kind of like raises the trajectory of the ball. So, and he talked about maybe it's like a leg strength thing, which I don't think it's that for a professional center, especially when as athletic as he is. But he also talked about maybe it's because your knees are too far out in front over your toes because you're like trying to rush out of the stance. And I do wonder if like his height affects it, because, compared to other centers that are shorter, maybe more compact, it might be easier for them to stay in that squatting position and then explode up into, their stance once they're mid play. But for a guy who's so tall, maybe he feels the need to, get up quicker so he could, because he has more ground to cover, or like space to cover, I guess, because he's taller. Maybe he feels the need to, explode and rush out faster so he can get up and into the matchup, square up his guy. So I think he's going to get it figured out. And the main thing is because it seems like it's a consistently high, so it seems fixable to me. But yeah, it's definitely not something you want to just sweep under the rug, and it has seemed to persist. So hopefully he can get that cleaned up quickly.
Do we think he's getting reps in the preseason? I mean, probably not week 1, but it's probably worth giving him some reps.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one, because I mean, we know there's a few guys who won't play, part of that starting lineup. Tyron's not playing. Moses, at least until your dress rehearsal against the Giants, if they even choose to play some of the starters in that. AVT is probably not playing until that. So, do you throw Tittman out there just to get him some reps, even without the rest of the starters? At this point, I think I would. I don't know if they're going to. I mean, what do you think, PJ? Commanders is a week from now. Are you putting Tittman out there for, just the sake of getting these game reps?
Well, I know we were gonna get to it in a couple minutes here, but you're going against a really good interior offensive line in joint practice, or defensive line in joint practices this week when you're playing Washington, and you're getting John Allen's gonna be right in your face there. So I think that to me is going to be what can he do on Thursday when you're getting one-on-ones against some of the top interior in the league, and is he capable of not only getting the snaps off but then just blocking and getting in front of him and containing what Washington's going to be able to do there. And Dan Quinn runs a lot of interesting fronts, and I think it's going to be good to see a little ones-on-ones action for this team. But yeah, I mean, he's a young player. I don't think a drive or two is going to kill him, especially if you're being hampered by this issue in practice every day.
Yeah, it's certainly not something we should just sweep under the rug. I think we're being bubbly about it because it's compared to all the other.
This is all there is to talk about.
This really is.
It is. Yeah.
But for somebody like Rodgers, who just seems so meticulous and plays with impeccable timing in the offense. I mean, we learned that last year that this offense really. I mean, not that there's a lot of problems with the offense, but if you have a quarterback who's not operating within the strict timing of the offense, it's going to throw everything off. And a snap being high, even if Rodgers catches it, can throw off the timing of a play. It can lead to injuries. This is something that could ruin drives like you saw today in the red zone. So this isn't something that is should be taken lightly. It is something where it's all right, we still have a month until the season. And like you said, Michael, it's a pretty consistent high snapping issue. You're hoping that it's one of those things that can get reined in. The other big storyline of training camp would be Haason Reddick's holdout, which is as of August 3rd, still active. I would expect him to be there week one, but it sounds like, I think part of this also, I mean, obviously there's a contract component here we're going to hop into. Part of it, he's a veteran. He's rushing the passer. He's playing in this Rob Saleh defense, which is going to be attack and get upfield. It's not the end of the world if he's not in training camp. And he's a veteran who also, it's maybe he doesn't want to be out there in the Jersey humidity day in and day out of training camp, especially if he doesn't have the ideal contract. We talked about it when they traded for him, that we didn't think they should give him an extension because of the looming big contracts of their 2022 class. And just because he's still an elite pass rusher, but he's an aging pass rusher, you have to save that money. And it's you let him walk, and then in 2 years you can get a compensatory pick for him, a third or a fourth rounder, and it seems pretty good considering you gave up a second for him. So all that said, Michael, actually it was a third that turns into a second if they extend him, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, they can get back the third if they let him walk, which was a big part of the reason I don't think they should extend him. I'm curious, does that?
No, I don't think the extension was the condition. I think it's the snap.
The snap count. Sorry, the snap count. You're right. Yeah, it's 67 and a half, and you're right. And the highest guy was Jermaine Johnson, who only played 65. So you're right about that. Right. But it seems like maybe they'll come to some sort of agreement where they bump up his salary for this season, but not extend him.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, it just makes the most sense. I don't think the Jets traded for him to extend him long term. It's just you're getting a 30-year-old edge rusher in a contract year who's going to be rushing with his hair on fire in this, like you said, this Robert Saleh scheme, which I think is perfect for a speed rusher like him. And you reap the benefits of that for 1 year. Let someone else pay for his 30s. You have 2 first-round edge rushers that you already drafted to hold the fort down who are under contract. And you could recoup the pick that you gave up to get him by allowing him to walk and getting that compensatory pick, which you assume you're going to get because the Jets are, they're going to extend a lot of guys. Their cap space is tight. They're probably not going to be active signing people next year. So if they do let Reddick walk and he signs a huge deal, you assume that there's a good chance they will get the compensatory pick back. So I think that was their plan. And from what we've heard, it seems like they tried to get him on board with that. And it seemed like they had an agreement, but it fell through. So what happened between the trade and now is hard to say, but I think ultimately he's losing a lot of money right now. I mean, $50K per day, and I think there was like a $300K like kicker a couple days ago for a certain date. It's a lot, and like he has to play. He doesn't have the leverage to sit out. He's a 30-year-old pass rusher. He needs to play if he wants a big deal that he's looking for. He's not 25, 26 years old, so he's going to be out there. And I think the Jets are right for playing hardball here. I don't know how much we can blame them for it getting to this point without more information. I think you could criticize them for not having more certainty, but as long as he shows up and plays, no one remembers the camp holdout. Like I hear people say, oh, you have to have the confirmation before you make this trade. You can't have one of your star players holding out. Yes, you can. Chris Jones didn't play the season opener last year. Nick Bosa held out of all of training camp. No one remembers that. All they remember is those two guys being in the Super Bowl. So I don't think that matters. I think he's going to show up, and they'll agree to some sort of revised deal that gives him more guaranteed money this year, because I think that's what he's afraid of. If he gets injured tomorrow, all the money's gone.
Well,
so I think
holding out of camp is a great way to increase the likelihood of that happening. We saw with Revis in 2010, he had the hamstring issue, and part of it's because he wasn't there in camp every day.
So I think they'll give him more guarantees. They might throw in some more incentives, but I don't see them extending him. But I think it'll pretty soon get resolved next couple of weeks.
PJ, what do you think? Do you think they give him the extension, or do you think they just go full hardball and just wait for him to report?
I hope they go full hardball. I'm like totally with it at this point. It's listen, I'm not going to relitigate the trade and the letting Bryce Huff go for this, because like I was not on board with that when it happened, and here we are kind of thing. But it's not worth talking about that. But at this point, like, you drafted Will McDonald for a reason. Like, there's a lot of hemming and hawing, and should that have happened, all of that debate is, I still think is fair and is still on the table. But if you believe in that guy enough to take him 15th overall, then you think you're in a position on this roster where you have 2 first-round picks at edge, like you said, and you're good enough to go with that for right now. And like, is adding a Pro Bowler, All-Pro, like, high teen sack guy going to help that? Obviously, that's indisputable. But you need to save the money. Like, the Sauce contract is going to be ridiculous. The Garrett contract is going to be ridiculous. Brees, I think it has,
we'll see what they do there.
Earned a second contract. Now the number is going to be abhorrent, but I think he has deserved it to this point. So you need to be cap conscious, and who is making those decisions, who is the GM in charge of all that, is also I think a fair question to ask at this point. But if you're Joe Douglas and you think you're the one making those decisions, I wouldn't want to handcuff myself to Haason Reddick either.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And the point about Will McDonald is probably the most important one. I think the one difference, I mean, there might be a few, considering Haason Reddick's a proven pass rusher in the NFL.
No, I'm not.
No.
Arguing
I agree with you, though, because it's like you took this guy 15th overall, and a big reason was, I think part of it was injury insurance. I think he was also just a highly rated player on their board. I believe in Robert Saleh's ability to identify defensive talent, and I think he saw somebody who he really thought he could mold into a blue chip pass rusher. And clearly their plan for him is to take the Bryce Huff role this year and to be the third down guy. But I'm kind of surprised that they aren't giving him more of the first and second down reps. And we know that Ulbrich and Saleh love rotating their pass rushers, but it seems like Michael Clemens is the guy who's really stepping in base personnel, which is surprising. I know they said McDonald didn't add that much weight this offseason, but he's added strength, and they're really just trying to focus on, I think he compared it to like Steph Curry shooting threes. It's like, this is what McDonald's good at. Keep him on the Bryce Huff snap count, keep him fresh for third downs. So I don't anticipate a huge drop off in their third down pass rush, because I do believe in Will McDonald. And if I'm not on the podcast again for at least a few months, I want it to be known I believe in Will McDonald. I think he's going to make an impact this year. But those first and second downs, the fall off from Reddick to Clemens is there, and we'll see how Clemens looks this year. I think he had a pretty disappointing second season last year. He seems like he's made some plays in training camp. That to me is the biggest concern about the Reddick fallout, because it's not just that you lost Bryce Huff, but you also lost John Franklin Myers. So that first down, it's really the run defense. That's what I'm curious to see, because Reddick is surprisingly a very good defender against the run. We know what Jermaine Johnson can do. Obviously, they're great inside with Quinnen Williams and C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, but we'll see about Clemens. We'll see about Javon Kinlaw inside. The run defense is a bit of a concern for me, and I guess that's a good jumping off point. Michael, through 2 weeks, I mean, obviously the Tippmann snapping issue is like the top negative story. But as we get into preseason, I guess what are some of the things you're interested to see? I mean, I guess we can start with this Commanders game, but we can look at it because the Commanders game will probably be mostly backups, but we'll see. What are you concerned about? What are you looking forward to seeing outside of the uniforms? It's a bummer that the first time we see these glorious uniforms against the worst uniforms in the league and the Commanders, but just kind of what are you looking forward to seeing this preseason, and maybe what's something that you might be concerned about that you're hoping is alleviated?
Well, first of all, before talking about concerns, I think one thing that we all have to realize when we talk about these things right now is how trivial all of it is compared to what we're used to. I mean,
yes.
I'm about to, and you brought up, and I'm about to talk about the interior run defense, the edge setting, I don't know.
That matters.
Back, fourth receiver.
Hey, when you get into the playoffs, if you can't stop the run, that's just saying.
But it's August and
1,000 steps from now. I'm just saying.
We know who the offensive line is going to be on August 3rd.
That's right. They're actually getting reps together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I remember the reason I made my Twitter account in 2017 was so I could track the quarterback battle between Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty and 39-year-old Josh McCown. And when we made this podcast, I mean, it was 2019, but then you fast forward a year and we're watching Rashad Perriman being your top receiver.
Look, we've come a long way, Michael, but if you want to win the Super Bowl, I mean, I'm not saying
I know. I mean, I definitely go into like those probably, more than a lot of people. I will go into those, I would agree. Very minimal weaknesses.
You were the one finding high school offensive line coaches.
Yes, right. I'm
probably the most obsessive.
The center raising his butt on the snaps using like
to be clear, that was you. Yeah. Okay.
That I saw on Twitter. So yes, I'm aware of minimal weaknesses. I'll get into them. I understand perfectionism in pursuit of a championship. But with that being said, I just want to appreciate on August 3rd how like stress-free it is. Like I'm not saying it's perfect or that they are going to win the Super Bowl, but we've sat here talking about much worse issues than what we're talking about right now. And I just think that's cool. So I'm appreciating the next month. I mean, fingers crossed.
I agree. This is the viewpoint everybody needs to have. This is perfect.
Right.
You can be grateful. I was grateful last year, and then we went down the shitter.
Were we?
It was not this easy last year.
I guess it wasn't this easy. We were talking about the offensive line. I know, but I feel like I spent the entire summer last year like pontificating on like, wow, they really have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and like, wow, the Jets are back. And
that's true.
Right.
But like the offensive line could not block anybody.
It's a defense. I'm protecting myself. You're right. And we kind of swept that under the rug because we were all excited about they have Rodgers, and we were like, all right, well, they're still planning to start 37-year-old Dwayne Brown at left tackle. It's like, okay. Like we just kind of like we focused on the good because obviously there's a lot of it. I mean, we've watched in the history of this podcast, Michael, we haven't seen a single winning season. So I get it, but I'm just we'll see when the games count. I'm the eternal optimist on this podcast, and now I've turned into the cynic.
Because we do want to win a Super Bowl, and we want to be perfectionists and get there. We got to have that mentality. So, yeah, I think you brought up run defense. That's something I'm concerned about. I've said that before, that I think this could be, maybe an average run defense if some things don't go correctly. I think Javon Kinlaw is a major X factor for this team. I mean, he's your second defensive tackle next to Quinnen Williams. And, that's a huge advantage to have to play next to a guy like that. So you have a lot of opportunity as the player in that position. So is he going to be able to, match what Quentin Jefferson did as a pass rusher last year? Because he was a really solid piece of this defensive line. He's out the door. Kinlaw comes in, and Kinlaw did get outplayed by Jefferson last year, but the physical talent is through the roof. He's a great fit in this scheme. They believe in him. Seems like he put on a lot of muscle this offseason. So can he step up next to Quinton Williams, and especially against the run, because that's not something Quentin Jefferson was great at, but Kinlaw has also struggled with it. With that being said, I think he can be an upgrade because like he talked about it when he's speaking to the media. He showed really good self-awareness. It seemed like he knew that he had some struggles holding double teams last year, that it's something he can improve at. So he added that weight. He's focused on getting better at that. And if he can thrive in that role, this can be a great run defense because the Jets have guys flying all over the place at linebacker. They've Quinton drawing double teams, muddying things up. So they have the start. Like the floor is high for their run game. They're not going to be bad, but guys like Kinlaw, like can they step up and be able to take advantage of what those stars create for them? So there's some questions. And then also on the edge, like you mentioned, if Haason Reddick doesn't play, like, are we relying on, like, I think he is, but when he's off the field, like, is Michael Clemens going to bounce back from last year? If McDonald plays snaps against the run, what is he going to bring you there? Because JFM was a huge part of this run defense, and he's gone. So, yeah, there are some questions against the run. I think a handful of guys need to step up and prove themselves in that phase if you want to win those December, January games in Kansas City and Buffalo, in Cincinnati when the weather is terrible. So, yeah, it is a pretty important thing.
PJ, what are you looking forward to seeing? And maybe you don't have to go as negative if you don't want to, but what is something that is in the back of your head right now?
As I look down the roster and I love Mike Williams. Huge Mike Williams fan. How many games are you getting from Mike Williams?
Yeah,
like, realistically,
that's where I was going.
Let's be serious, people here. I do think, and I know, Michael, you've made this point, I think Lazard just quit last year, arguably rightfully so, and I expect him to be better this year, and I expect him to be
already seems better.
I don't know if he's going to be good. I loved Lazard on the Packers. Like, I thought he was a great fit. I thought it was a pretty decent deal they signed him to last year. With Rodgers back, obviously that is going to elevate. If he's putting in effort, I think obviously that's going to elevate. So I am excited about year 2 of Allen Lazard, as stupid as that is to say after last year. But as you look down the roster, is Corley going to be more than a gimmick? And then you look even further down, like, is Brownlee on the team? What is Gibson capable of, like, offensively? Where are you getting these tertiary pieces to, you have a 1,000-yard receiver, you have a stud that's going to give you 8 games, and then Allen Lazard and the rest of the group. So I think the wide receiver position is really my focus right now.
I think obviously when you look at the roster, the starting lineup jumps out as amazing. And then the other thing that I think kind of gets swept under the rug is the depth this year is the best, clearly the best it's ever been. If you look at even on the offensive line, the fact that you invested the 11th overall pick into a backup left tackle, you look at the backup quarterback that they signed in Tyrod Taylor, that's kind of getting swept under the rug. And granted, I haven't been at camp, but from what I've seen, Tyrod Taylor is having a great camp. The backup running backs that they brought in, I'm super excited to see Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis in action. It seems like every video I see of Allen, he just looks so big and so fast. And with not allowing the hip drop tackle this year, I really wonder how defenses are going to be able to tackle Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. And we can even lump Isaiah Davis into that. And I think that was a big reason, as the game gets faster and defenses get a little smaller and linebackers are a lot of times converted safeties and teams are in nickel most of the times. The Jets, and they won't be the only team to do this. You saw the Rams started to do this last year. Moved away from their zone running scheme into more of a man gap scheme. The Jets loaded up on big running backs, and I think you're going to see it pay dividends when, on the inverse of what we were talking about with concerns about the run defense, when the Jets get late into the season, when they're playing cold games in New England and in New York and whatnot, that they can, and obviously in the playoffs, hopefully, that they can carry their offense. Because I think the identity of this offense, as much as it is Aaron Rodgers audibling things at the line of scrimmage and having a Hall of Fame quarterback, I think they really want to be able to lean on the run game. I think Aaron Rodgers is almost, and this is going to sound wrong to say it, a complementary piece to the run game. I think that's the identity that they want to have. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is much more.
I think that's smart too. Like, you're relying on a 40-year-old quarterback to carry you the whole way. Like, he doesn't have to, especially when you have a superstar running back.
Right. No, exactly. And so you go through this roster and you see the depth at quarterback and offensive line and running back and linebacker, especially. I think, it seems like Jamie Sherwood's having a terrific camp. I really was excited to see Zaire Barnes, so I'm excited to see him in training camp. It seems like Chaz Surratt's having a good camp. And even guys like, Bernard Converse, who I kind of completely forgot about, has had a few good plays in camp. Stiggers is getting an interception every other day. So the depth on this team is great, but there are a few spots that I am very, very curious to see during preseason. First and foremost, like you said, PJ, is the receiver position, because the depth there's an opportunity for a guy like Brownlee, if he has a really big preseason that you can feel excited about. It's like, all right, as a receiver 5, receiver 6, receiver, whatever he is, to complement this roster, because like you said, you can anticipate that they're going to miss Mike Williams for at least some games this year. We'll see, but at least some games this year. Garrett Wilson has been relatively healthy throughout his entire career. Let's hope that continues. But behind him, it's like, yep, you're relying on Lazard, you're relying on a third-round rookie, and then you're relying on these undrafted guys from last year that you're hoping they take a leap from Gibson to Brownlee. So the depth at receiver is a major one for me. I did mention the depth on the offensive line, but the depth on the interior offensive line, I'm really interested to see during training camp. Because look, if whether it's Tittman snapping is holding back the offense or somebody gets injured, it's like they have Schweitzer, who I feel good about, but beyond Schweitzer, they don't really have. I mean, Xavier Newman got reps last year. Max Mitchell got some reps inside last year, but who's that other interior piece that's going to step up if AVT misses time? And like we've seen every year, the Jets get onto their 13th, 14th offensive lineman. So the backup, especially the interior, because with the tackles, you're not going to do much better than having Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, Olu Fashanu, Carter Warren. Like, as far as if you look at the tackle depth around the league, that's pretty good. And then the last one, I guess, would be, I guess the corners. I mentioned JBC and Stiggers. It's not really a concern for me, but I do want to see it. I won't read too much into it, but it does seem like Reed is getting beat a lot in camp, and part of that is just going up against Garrett Wilson and a Hall of Fame quarterback. But injuries, to Michael Carter II has forced Brandon Eccles into the slot. So I'm just curious to see, and also, we talk about contract decisions to make with Reddick. They have a big one coming up in the offseason between Reed and Michael Carter II. I'm of the opinion they should definitely go with Michael Carter II, the younger guy who's an integral part of this defense. And so maybe if we see a big preseason from a guy like Stiggers or from JBC, you can feel good about them sliding in this year if there's an injury to Sauce or Reed, and then maybe going forward to replace Reed. So those are some of the positions that stood out to me. I do have one more. I forgot about it because we were talking about the edge. And Michael, I'll go to you first here. Who do you think is going to win the battle for the 5th defensive end? Because obviously, okay, let's say Reddick makes a team. You have Jermaine Johnson. You have Will McDonald. You have Michael Clemens, who was playing interior and edge. And it sounds like Jermaine might do a little bit of that this year. Who's going to be that other guy on the edge? Because we know that they love rotating. It seems like Tack McKinley was having a great camp before his injury. Is that who you're thinking? Or are you looking at any of these undrafted guys you think might step up and make the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think McKinley definitely has a shot because the Jets will always make they'll make room for a speedy pass rusher, and it seems like he's been really good. I've seen some clips, and you don't want to go too much off what you hear at the training camp reports. And like, quick side note on that, like, all due respect to the reporters in attendance, but I've been at practices. Both of you have been at practices. You can't see that much standing on the sideline watching these plays, so I don't put that much stock into, Olu Fashanu's footwork looks better from a beat reporter. It's like, how do you see that from where you're standing? And like, I don't know. So side note, I don't really place a lot of stock into, unless it's Robbie Sabo is the only one I listen to out of training camp. Other than that, take it with a grain of salt at best. But it does seem like Tack McKinley's been active and getting playing time. And I've seen some clips where, like, he did look explosive off the ball. Like, he looks athletic, and the Jets prefer guys like that. And Clemens, he's pretty likely to make the team, but I think, someone like Eric Watts, the undrafted free agent, he kind of has that build to match what Clemens does as that, burly edge setting defensive end, maybe occasionally can kick inside. He seems like someone who's made some noise and has the build to replicate what Clemens could do, because Clemens struggled last year. I mean, he had a decent rookie year, but he did not do much of anything last season. Pass rushing, he was a total zero, but you put up with that because he's supposed to be a really good run stopping presence, but he wasn't that effective in that phase either last year. So I would keep an eye on him getting pushed by Eric Watts or maybe like Braden McGregor, one of these other under the radar type guys, but McKinley has a chance. So yeah, I mean, what do you guys think?
I'm intrigued by the Takk McKinley thing. Obviously, like where is he health wise is a big deal, especially this early in camp. But that's a guy that, first round pedigree never really came together in the pros. But you have him with this development staff now that obviously has fixed a lot of guys and has, Sally Thomas was even a higher profile, first round. I don't want to call Sally Thomas a bust, but
Quincy Williams is the number one ranked Jet. Not that I read anything into the NFL top 100, but he was the number one Jet on the team.
Yeah, well, Tyreek Hill is the greatest football player of all time, according to that list. So we can take that for whatever it's worth. But this is a staff that has clearly proven, and in Kinlaw, who you mentioned before, is setting out to do it again with these first round reclamation projects. And Takk McKinley is a guy that has played in this league for a long time. And that's a guy, if he gets on the field in preseason games, like, dude, you got to just go beat like third teamers as a former first round pick with 6 years of experience. And you got to show me something there. So I think my hope is that he will, and he would have the inside track there. I think it makes sense given the MO of what this defensive staff has tried to do on these kind of high profile reclamation projects in the last couple of years. So I would expect, health permitting, that he's got the inside track on that job right now.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, McKinley's been a 7-sack guy before. So like as your 5th, 6th defensive end for depth, or a guy who just comes in and plays like 8 snaps, like that's great. If he can get back to that level, which, hopefully, like you said, playing against preseason competition, he should be able to, but we'll see. He'll definitely be one of the top guys I'll be watching.
The last thing before we get into one other topic and we get out of here, but the last thing we haven't really talked about at all is QB3, because obviously Jordan Travis still coming back from injury. And
here we go.
Obviously,
here we
go.
Yeah,
QB3.
this is everybody's talking.
You laugh, but how many times has the QB3 entered for the Jets in the last few years?
We
every
could just
season,
hang up
dude.
everything.
It's the Tom Moore quote. Like, we don't practice QB3.
Yeah, I get it. But I'm just saying, Jordan Travis doesn't seem like he's going to play in preseason. Tyrod Taylor is a fantastic backup, but what's his big flaw? Staying healthy.
Getting punctured in the lung.
Okay, well, yes, that's true. Let's hope the Jets medical staff doesn't do that. But you have Rodgers, who's pushing 40, coming off an Achilles. We'll see. He's been, an Iron Man the last few years up until last year, but we'll see. But if he goes down, you have Tyrod Taylor, who's a great backup. But how long do you have Tyrod for? And how long are you from Andrew Peasley playing in Week 13 in a must-win game? So that's the other camp storyline I'm fascinated.
Well, you don't let it.
Who has a third quarterback that you trust?
You don't let it get.
Look at all the depth charts. Which one are you like? Okay,
I think you feel better if Travis was healthy. I think you'd feel better. It's like, all right, at least we drafted this guy.
I wouldn't.
No,
I'd just go.
Are you not a Travis guy?
I like Jordan Travis. I thought he was a great college quarterback, and I was excited when we picked him. But like, I would rather go sign. I mean, Flacco's not the answer because Flacco played himself into a real job. But like, I would go find the Joe Flacco of the last couple of years.
Which QBs are still available?
Like, what is Colt McCoy up to? Ryan Tannehill is not on a team. Like,
that's true, and that's what they would do.
That's
exactly what they would do.
In October, call Ryan Tannehill.
That's what they would do. Yeah, and he has experience with the offense too, or with Keith Carter and.
I actually think that's the
what
answer.
I thought they were going to sign. But yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be someone off the couch before one of these guys.
All right.
So I don't think it matters beyond our entertainment.
So we're not
for the next 3 games. Like, just be fun, like Chris Streveler. That's what you want to see in a third quarterback. I don't want to see, Mike White. No offense to Mike White, but not that style of gameplay.
It's a bad take from you.
No, I'm saying like preseason.
I'd like to see somebody who can run the offense.
White. I'm just saying like preseason football, like it could be a lot of 4-yard dump offs. Like I want to see someone running wild. Like,
no, we need like
dumb stuff.
When the Rams had Bryce Perkins and he just ran around all crazy. That's the stuff we kind of need.
We could use a mobile quarterback. I want one surprise make and one surprise cut before we get out of here. I'll give you some time to think, unless you have somebody teed up.
I pulled up the Our Lads depth chart. I mean, I've had it the whole time. So
yeah.
Do you have one teed up?
No. I just completely threw that in. I just threw a grenade into this podcast and have no answer. Let me think. So surprise, we talked about, you mentioned a surprise cut that you think. I mean, I don't think they'd cut Clemens, honestly.
Clemens
I don't think
was going to be my answer. I don't think he's a lock at all. I
don't think so.
I don't
That's
think
true.
I don't
If
think he's a lock.
Watts really plays well, and even McGregor and McKinley, like that's true. If those guys play well,
can I say Izzy as my?
No, I was gonna say
no. That doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're
Not
surprised.
enough?
I would give you.
Okay.
Izzy as a surprise.
Is he a surprise? I mean, after Cohen retiring out of nowhere, which was a weird situation, and I don't know if we want to touch on that at all. It seems like the day before Saul was talking about he's having a great camp, and then even after he got cut, he's like he was having a great camp. I was surprised. You never know what happened there, but that was a weird situation. But after that, maybe Izzy can make the team. I think Izzy's practice squad bound unless another team picks him up after he gets cut, and we'll see. But even if he has a huge preseason, are you carrying 4 running backs?
Yeah, like he would be my pick here. I don't know if that's even surprising enough. If not, I would take Clemens if that's not stealing yours, PJ. And I'll say my surprise make Eric Watts. There's always someone that makes it who you're like, wait, what? Because I feel like there's always that favorite, and there's also that as well, that fan favorite who doesn't make it. And then it's for like Irvin Charles, who was a great special teamer. I'm not saying that was wrong, but I'm just saying like he wasn't as hyped as some other players.
Training camp when everybody was desperately begging Chris Owusu to make the team. I remember that. I have a lot of Chris Owusu tweets from 2015.
I was all in on Owusu. You look at this roster, and I gotta say there aren't a lot of positions up for grabs.
Dude, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Like you look at the roster and you have like, I don't know, of the 53, how many spots are we calling open? Like 6, 7. Like,
I mean, the spots to look at it are, receiver, depth at receiver. If somebody really stands out, like if a Lance McCutcheon really has a great preseason, maybe
today was a Hamza El Zayed. He was
it seemed like he was all over the place.
All right, so that's kind of what happened with Robbie Anderson years ago, is he just had a huge preseason and that elevated him to making the roster. I think, like you said, Michael, I think the defensive end, the 5th defensive end, that's the real battle of training camp between McKinley and Watts and McGregor, and so I think that's something to really pay attention. It's same with defensive tackle.
Cohen, like I think that might be the position that benefits from it more so than Izzy, because I think they love both of these guys that they drafted in Allen and Davis, and they trust them. So I feel like that extra spot is maybe more, and also in terms of returner, I think that it seems like Corley and Gibson are kind of leading the way there. So I could see them keeping another defensive lineman instead of Cohen's spot, assuming he would have made the team, which I was starting to think that he was going to. I could see that pushing more towards the defensive line than running back.
Here's one. Oh, sorry, PJ, you got one?
No, I'm intrigued by tight end 3. I think
I
think it's at least relevant. Like I think Zach Coots obviously has like a really big athletic upside that we didn't get to see a lot last year. We saw it a little bit in camp. He was kind of featured on Hard Knocks for like a second there. I'm intrigued. Like I think Tyler Conklin is fine. Like what you're getting out of him. I love Ruckert. I hope he's, ready to take that leap in year 3 now. But I don't know. Like, can Zach Kuntz give you a couple snaps a game and get really interesting here? I think that's at least something to keep an eye on through the preseason.
I've been in on the Yeboah hive. I think Yeboah, showed something at the end of last year, especially as a blocker. It seems like he's developed. So I'm excited for the Kenny Yeboah preseason hype. But the surprise cut already kind of happened to me, which was Nick Bodden. And then they brought in Anthony Ferkser. Before we wrap up here, Michael, do you have any thoughts on that? It seems like, I don't know. I think Nick Bodden got injured maybe. He struggled with injuries throughout his career. But like, what do you make of that move? And is there anything to read in there that they cut their starting fullback from last year, who not only was, but he played a big, part of special teams as well. And then with these new kickoff rules, it seems like that tight end 3, tight end 4 fullback position is going to be, a big factor. What do you make of that move?
It was interesting because you look at Nathaniel Hackett's history, both with the Packers and even his pre-Green Bay teams. He usually does have a fullback and is closer to the top in the usage of the fullback. So it would be a departure if they were to not use one this year. But, they signed.
Ferkser?
Yeah, well, Well, he's not really a fullback. He's kind of a
Lions
normal
legend Anthony Firkser.
tight end.
Yeah, do you have any special insight, PJ, on Anthony Firkser?
Yeah.
I don't. He should have had a touchdown in the NFC Championship game, but he accidentally ran out of bounds at the 1 yard line, and I have been questioning it since January 29th. That's my only Anthony Firkser insight.
Sounds like a Jet.
Austin Severian Jenkins 2.0.
Oh man.
God.
Don't bring back the bad memories. You know what, Michael? Go back to waxing poetic about how far we've come, because don't bring up.
We don't have to think
PTSD.
about ASJ anymore.
You should think about it. That's the value of all the struggles that we've been through. Like, it's not to be buried or forgotten about. It's moments like this where you pull back from that and you compare now to then and just like think like, wow, we've come that far. That's what the value that is.
I have one positive, underrated, and not that underrated, but something that actually isn't getting talked about as much as it should be, and then we can get out of here. The fact that look, we'll see when it's live and when there's contact, but the fact that Aaron Rodgers is seemingly picking up from where he left off last year, which I am, again, we haven't seen it in
great
game.
Point by you, because we've made it 45 minutes and we have not talked about Aaron Rodgers yet.
And it's like this guy is nearly 40 coming off an Achilles.
We deserve an award for that, honestly.
And we'll see. And we'll see. Like, again, he's got the red jersey on. So, the big question with the Achilles is going to be evading sack. Like, I would imagine he's going to be a little slower and whatnot. But, you're always worried, like, when you have a major ligament tear like that, like how that can affect some of the mechanics. That can affect the accuracy. But the accuracy seems as pinpoint as ever. The arm seemingly is as live as ever. I would imagine there's going to be a little bit of a fall off in the mobility. But, hey, that's fine, because he's getting rid of the ball so quickly, and he finally has an offensive line in front of him that you feel like can protect him for longer than 2 seconds, which is seemingly all he needs. Last thing, we can get out of here. Just kind of the thoughts on the Aaron Rodgers camp so far. PJ, I guess I can start with you. But it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he was going to walk into this camp and play as well as he's played. I mean, I know the offense had a couple sloppy days in theirs, but he's had plenty of days where the ball hasn't even touched the ground. And, for a 40-year-old coming off an Achilles, that's not necessarily a given.
I mean, it might not have been like a given, but I don't know why you would have expected anything else, right? Like this, he's Aaron Rodgers, man. Like this is, I just, and like mentally, like it's such a foreign concept to me to not like be as cynical as him. But if there's anybody that I would ever believe in to figure this out, it's Aaron Rodgers. Like, and he's kept every receipt and has screenshotted everything anybody has ever said about him and wants nothing more than to just shove it in everybody's faces. Not to be a New York Jet, not to take this franchise out of the doldrums and the longest playoff drought in North American sports and all that nonsense.
Nice word.
This is not what he's here for. He's here for him at this point, and a motivated Aaron Rodgers is, quite frankly, I mean, it's unlike anything possibly in sports. Like, I have no expectation other than that he's going to be the man as long as he's out there. And yeah, like, are you maybe handing the ball off more than he would have in the past? Absolutely. Rightfully so. Like, are you putting more guardrails on the 40-year-old? Sure. Absolutely. I don't care. Like, he's the guy until he's not. He is arguably, the most talented player in the history of the position. Like, I have nothing but just unobstructed belief in what this man is capable of.
Doesn't me fired up. Michael, any thoughts on Rodgers camp?
Yeah, kind of hard to top that. But I mean, to go off of that, I think that ties into the latest unnecessary drama surrounding this man, which was his sideline blowups or quote unquote blowups with Garrett Wilson. And like, I remember seeing the clip of that for the first time, whether it was from SNY or whatever it was. And I just knew immediately it was going to be a national story for no reason whatsoever.
But saw it for 3 days. I mean, he missed one mini camp practice, and I saw it on ESPN like a month later.
Right.
It's all anybody ever wants to talk about is that he didn't show up to something 2 months ago at this point. Who cares? I don't care. Right. Nobody cares.
So yeah, I mean, like seeing those is just positive to me. The way that he gets into it with Garrett Wilson, and apparently like gets hard on Tippmann if he has a bad snap or whatever it might be. Like that's the type of intensity that I think the Jets
I would get hard on Joe
have been
Tippmann
missing.
too. Do your job.
Yeah,
Snap the ball.
right. So,
like I would be mad.
So I'm just glad to see that from Rodgers. It seems like he's very intense, hands-on, high standards, and you need those you need to have those expectations to win a Super Bowl. Like, you're not going to win it by accident. That has to be your expectation. And it seems like he's established that throughout this building.
Yeah, and look, that's really one of the things and one of the concerns about, look, this team is too talented, really. I'm going to say something that people are going to cringe at, but too talented to fail if they can stay healthy. Really, the concern for me is staying healthy. And then the other one would have been, because this team hasn't made the playoffs in 13 years, and because it was a young team. I mean, I'll get to that in a second. A lot of times in the NFL, you have to learn how to win. So a lot of times you'll see a team on the rise. They'll have a year where they make the playoffs, then they'll lose in the playoffs. And then they had that experience, and now the next year is the year where they can maybe get over the top. But you look at the veteran leaders on this team, from Aaron Rodgers to Tyron Smith to CJ Mosley to even guys like, I think Quinnen Williams at this point is a veteran leader on this team. Morgan Moses. They have a lot of guys on this team that have been there and know how to win and are going to carry this team through the adversity of November and December and into the playoffs. And so I'm not as concerned about the Jets, even though they haven't made the playoffs and since I was 10 years old, overcoming those demons, because they have these pillars in the locker room to keep them focused. And like you said, Michael, it's like, that's what I would hope Aaron Rodgers is doing in August and July. I would hope that he's, ironing out all the details and bringing that same intensity to practice every single day. Because if you have an easy training camp, guess what? You might have an easy season and a losing season. I want a hard training camp to prepare them for, November and December and January. So I think that's a great point you made. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was such an overblown story. And it really showed, not just people who haven't played sports, but just people just sensationalizing, which there's going to be a lot more of. The first time that Aaron Rodgers has a tough game where he throws 2 or 3 interceptions and they lose, the national media, it cannot wait to dance in his grave. So like you said, PJ, motivated Aaron Rodgers looking to prove everybody wrong is a scary thing for the rest of the NFL. The only thing that can hold this team back is its health. And, but that said,
I mean, think about the last time he had this level of motivation. It was when the Packers drafted Jordan Love, and look what he proceeded to do. So having him at this level is something special. And I don't think that's something you should bet against. Yeah. It's something that you should be afraid of.
And the thing, just to put a, pin on, or the cherry on what I was saying, is like, they have the depth to overcome the inevitable injuries that will come. They can't overcome all of them, but it's an NFL season. Guys are going to go down. You'll have guys like Ashton Davis starting games, who I feel good about starting. It's like if a linebacker goes down.
What a wild turn of events.
There, I know. Yeah. Seems like he's really turned it on. And it's like somebody who, might be the starting safety by the end of the year, injury or not. If a guy like Jamin Sherwood has to step in, you feel good about. And we'll see, that's really the thing I'm going to pay attention to this preseason, is the depth on the roster, especially at those key positions. If the Jets lose a corner, how confident are we that Stiggers can step in from day one and bring a level to this Jets defense that is at least going to prevent them from collapsing? I mean, we saw them win game. They beat the Eagles with Craig James and Bryce Hall last year. So we know that with this system, they can survive injuries at that position. There are a few positions throughout, the team that it would be tough to overcome, but you look at the depth and it's like, they can win games pretty much no matter what. This team is the most talented they've ever been, not just in my lifetime, of any Jets team. And, we'll see. My optimism from last year has been tarnished a little bit. I'm cautiously optimistic. I will never let myself get
this team is so much better than it was last year.
That's true.
Like it just is, like, top to bottom. I like you just said, I literally think it's the best roster in franchise history. Like I would put it up against those Revis Sanchez teams.
Yeah,
and
98.
Top to bottom, I think you're looking at least similar, if not better. And the trump card, in no offense to Vinny, certainly no offense to Mark Sanchez, the trump card would be just, you have the quarterback, which at the end of the day is what matters more than anything else.
Boys, I think that's a good place to wrap it. You guys will be back after the first preseason game. So I guess that'll be, probably record that Sunday. So next pod coming out Monday. We do promise this time. PJ and Michael will have us on a strict schedule.
Yeah.
Michael, I mean, we've
Charger boy is out of here. We're gonna be tight.
I know,
with
13
the
years,
schedule.
no playoffs.
He's got to go iron his khakis, and we're getting
tuck my
into
shirt
it
in.
here.
Yes. Hey, I'll still be lurking in the background if timing and other circumstances allowed. I might hop on this podcast at some point during the season, but I have no doubt that you two are going to do great things this year. And I'm just same with the team. I mean, I'm hoping that this is the year that they can at least make the playoffs, at least have a winning season. PJ, have fun doing a podcast, hopefully during a winning season, because Michael and I have done a lot of podcasts during disastrous seasons. That's pretty much all we've done. I mean, the only good podcast.
Sometimes it's more fun that way, though. I don't know. I guess
I'm excited to see you after a loss too.
Yeah.
I think you were pretty funny after those 2019 losses. So yeah, I mean, Michael, it's been a journey. Obviously, I mean, we're we'll still talk pretty much every other day, so not going anywhere. But it's this podcast has been like the coolest thing, and I've just been so honored to do it with you, man. It's been really fun, and just thank you to everybody who's listened and built the show up. It's obviously played a big part in my career, but just in terms of every week getting on this podcast and venting and having an outlet to talk Jets has been a really special awesome opportunity I've been extremely grateful for. So PJ, I know you're going to do great stuff. Michael, finally I can rest now that the Jets uni set is complete and perfect. I'm like Thanos. I can finally sit down and watch over my kingdom. The Jets do not have bad uniforms anymore. I can rest.
Yeah, honestly, like it's gonna be a little less fun now. We had so many discussions about what's the best combo this uniform.
PJ, you better get into the unis because that was a major
better. Now it's like so straightforward. Like
if we come out in Santa Clara in the pickle pants, I will be dead.
That's true.
You'll need to replace me.
That's the only discussion that needs to be had.
I'll be gone. Yeah, that's it.
I think the pickle pants might look okay this year, but not in prime
no, they won't.
Not in prime
No, they won't ever look good. But that's fine. I'm glad you believe that.
I think it's an upgrade, but I agree. Like, there's not a lot of places I would rather be doing that when you could be wearing the perfect, pristine all white that we saw last season in those two very memorable, positive games when they wore them.
Nothing bad happened ever.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well,
but yeah, like to go off your point, Ben, like it's been an awesome ride. I mean, this is almost 5 years at this point, which is crazy to say. It's been a lot of downs, but the fact that we've had this
entirely been down.
Hey, we were 6-3 a couple years ago.
Yeah, we had that 7-4 season. The 2022 draft was pretty fun. I think the tank for Trevor year, where losses felt like wins was a fun year.
Oh my god, my reaction.
That was the most fun I've ever had with anything ever. Was the tank for Trevor?
That is like one of the most successful seasons in terms of like rooting for something.
It felt like we went 14-2. It felt like we went 14-2. That's what it felt like.
This is like I bought in for the Colts game in week 3. That was the start of me. Not at the start of that game, but once Darnold threw like 2 picks or whatever, I was like, all right, it's time.
He threw a pick 6 on like the second play of the game. Yeah.
This guy's
done. And then from then on, just like every week, you got what you wanted. And then usually it was anticlimactic. But that Raiders game, I remember putting my reaction on this podcast. That's no one needs to look back at that. Let's just say that. But I'm hoping for similar reactions to positive things this year. But yeah, a lot of downs, but it was awesome to always have this through that. I mean, it made it a lot more bearable to be able to come on here and do this with you. And then just on top of that, it's like, like you said, we still talk constantly, play MLB the show. We're still looking to improve on our 2-12 record.
14 together. Yeah, we do the
co-op
2v2
online. But it's awesome, like what we both gotten out of it, both as Jets fans and like I guess content creators. I don't love that term, but I suppose that's what we're doing. Podcasters.
Yeah. Subscribe to the OnlyFans.
Yeah. But both in terms of that and just like in real life as friends, it's definitely been awesome. I remember sending you an email for the first time, just like seeing what you're doing. I was like, that's cool. Like that someone my age is doing a Jets podcast. At that point, like I just made my Twitter. I was just starting to write a Gangrene Nation, like really just beginning to dip my toes into all this, and I saw what you were doing and reached out, and I wanted to go to Syracuse, and you were starting to go there, which I ended up not going there, but we kind of started talking over
worked
that
out pretty well.
I think it worked out great for both of us. I mean, you're working for an NFL team. I'm, running Jets X Factor. So
hey,
yeah, it's been an awesome ride. So I'm looking forward to. This isn't the end either. You'll be back. Hopefully, there's another day in the future when what we had right here, all three of us, can be a routine thing. But best of luck to you, of course, the season with the Chargers, the Jim Harbaugh operation over there. I know you told me he was smiling at you in a press conference.
Yeah, hey, I had my
first day there. So
I said hi to him yesterday. It's just us on the stairs.
You did?
Yeah, I gave him a coach, and he says hello. So I was like, all right, I'm in.
Nice.
I'm working my way the Eric Spoelstra route. I'll start drawing up plays and handing it to him. Be like, have you seen this bubble screen? This 2nd and 10 bubble screen? I learned it from watching Adam
football
Gase.
Coach. Snap technique. I think.
Anytime,
who's the Charger center right now?
Bradley Bozeman.
How's his snapping?
He's at least good.
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, he's
okay. So he doesn't need the breakdown.
No. All right. I guess that'll do it for us. I'm trying to think if I have any last bold predictions I'd like to get out, just in case I'm not on this podcast for a while. I would say one. Here's a bold one. Braylon Allen will be the best Jets rookie this season. You like that one? Like that one?
I don't think that's that bold.
I mean, Malachi Corley, fashion. Okay, whatever.
Well, you hope the obvious answer doesn't have to play. So that's
right.
Let me think. Well, not Jets related. I do believe in the Sam Darnold resurgence with the Vikings. So I'm all in on our boy Sammy boy.
All,
I think
all on the same page
bold.
there.
I think he's going the Geno Smith route. I think he's going to do well this season with the Vikings. All right, one more. Let me think of one last bold prediction for the year. You know what? I got it. Jets are winning the Super Bowl. Going out on a high note.
Not bold.
On paper, I mean, come on, please. This is it. This is the opportunity. We'll see. They have a 2-year window here. And then it's.
I have a random prediction.
Oh yeah, give me it.
Max Mitchell will catch the Jets' first touchdown of the season.
Get out of here. Yeah, get ready. PJ, get ready when you do. We so during the game.
PJ was with the Lions last year. He knows that an offensive line is eligible.
That's
very
true.
familiar.
We don't have Ben Johnson. We don't have Ben Johnson at OC though. That might be. We would do like a random prediction before the games for the game previews, and Michael would come. I think he went like, actually he did hit a couple, but he would be like. Nick Bodden is going to recover a kickoff fumble and run it in for a touchdown. He'll pitch it to Ashton Davis.
There was a fullback last year who had a kick return touchdown. Yeah, Andrew Beck for the Texans. So,
all right, well,
hey, although it doesn't look like we need
a fullback. So we'll see what happens.
How about okay? Last one. Jermaine Johnson has 12 or more sacks. You like that?
Sold.
Okay, that's a good one. Realistic yet bold. So
realistic yet bold. Oh, and last thing, how many? Okay, well, whatever. We can do stat prediction. You guys have all training camp to do stat predictions. I was gonna get into Garrett Wilson and all that stuff, how many yards and touchdowns, but you know what? I don't want to jinx anything.
All of the yards.
All of the yards. I mean, that guy. One. Yeah, 2,000 yards. Yes. No.
For Garrett,
is that possible?
I think Brees can get 2,000 scrimmage yards. I'll put that. I think that will happen. So there's mine.
All right. Thank you everybody for listening. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. Michael _Nanny at PJ. I don't think I have your Twitter already pulled up, but it's at the real PJ Clark, right?
Yes, sir.
Was there imposter PJ Clarks?
I don't know. I couldn't get my actual name in 2013, but that account hasn't been active since then. So maybe I'll email Elon.
So follow at the real PJ Clark on Twitter. He'll be taking over. Obviously, follow the podcast at CYJ Pod. Subscribe to the iTunes Jets X Factor. Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. You can find us wherever you listen to pods. That's it. Oh, also, this is the worst plug in the history of my tenure here, and it's the last one. I mean, this is automatic, but I'm just scraping my brain if there's anything else I want to get out. But go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. That's going to do it for me. You guys are going to be back next week. PJ, Michael, you guys are going to do great stuff. Very exciting season upcoming. You guys will be talking about the first preseason game of the season, all sorts of takeaways. first and foremost being the uniform. Oh, that was the last thing. Thank you. Sorry. Thank God. I know I briefly touched on it. Thank God they brought back those throwbacks. I mean, how perfect is this uni set? Those throwbacks are so beautiful. I love all the tweaks they made to it. I just
Dude,
had to get
I can't believe we're like doing throwbacks to like Marcus May.
That's
like,
that's 1968 Super Bowl. You know, like that's not. Those were already throwbacks to the name of throwbacks. The uni set is perfect.
Yeah, but now I think of like Marcus May and like Kellen
Spencer
Winslow,
Long,
Spencer
Terrell
Long,
Pryor.
ASJ.
Ardarius Start, Chad Hansen. This is where my mind goes. So hopefully we make better memories this year.
That's the last time we saw those uniforms. So it's on Deontay Burnett, Andre Roberts.
Deontay Burnett, who's still in the league somehow.
Where is he?
Is he?
He's on the Eagles.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
He did that cool catch against the Bears that one time. So I'm all in on Deontay Burnett. I don't think I'm going to throw him in.
Now he's on the Cowboys. I saw
he's
him.
on the
I saw a
Cowboys.
training
All right.
camp tweet about how well Deontay Burnett was doing, and I literally had to do a triple take that Deontay Burnett was still in the league. So that's where we're
26. Best
We're
still
moving.
ahead of him.
All right. Yeah. It's entering his prime years.
We're moving.
Thank
forward.
you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I thoroughly appreciate it. Make sure you follow PJ. Make sure you follow the pod. You're probably already following Michael, so that's okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great week. They'll be back on Monday. Go Jets.